of Jay's Analysis podcast and Esoteric Hollywood. He's also a regular contributor to 21st Century Wire, Soul of the East, and Espionage History Archive, as well as appearing on numerous nationally syndicated shows like Ours and Coast to Coast AM, as well as TV shows like Buzzsaw and Sean Stone. Talks about everything out there under the sun, especially when it comes to theology, geopolitics, literature, history, and, of course, what's going on with Hollywood and the media. Jay Dyer, welcome to Ground Zero.
Thank you, Clyde. Glad to be here.
So we were talking during the break about we're both now. I'm watching the Apocalypse American Horror Story. I've seen 2 episodes of it, and immediately I'm thinking to myself, and there's more to come, and we're going to talk about what else is out there. They're not anymore hiding the fact that they really have to go deep down into the depths of hell to scare people and give people the reality that our fate is nothing more than, being held up in some dark, dank dungeon somewhere with a bunch of freaks who think they're witches and think they're Satanists, or they are Satanists. What do you think about the trend that you're seeing right now in entertainment?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a whole list of just a crazy amount of movies and films that are filled with specifically this narrative, and I think that this signifies their belief, and that is the occult elite in the new Aeon, that they're going to usher in the new Aeon. They believe that the Book of Revelation is more of a ritual text. They don't believe the way most churches or preachers would interpret it. They believe that you can go through some sort of process and actually invoke these entities yourself. That was Crowley's view. That was the view of Jack Parsons, Kenneth Anger, all these scions of the occult. And I think that we're seeing that ideology reflected now in Hollywood, in a lot of the scripts and a lot of the screenplays and a lot of the shows that get greenlit. And the best example is this more recent season 8 of American Horror Story. In fact, it even begins, if you saw the film promo posters, 9/12. So you have the 9/11 ritual day. And then that inaugurates that opens the gateway, if you will, the portal. And then the following day is the inauguration of the new Aeon. And everything in that new episode, the season 8, was everything conspiracy that you can think of, all wrapped up in one. It was like a satanic version of Brave New World, with the Antichrist, with cannibalism, with this radical social Darwinism,
and not only that, but the thing that somebody pointed out to me, and I remembered watching the first episode, was everything that, for example, they're told that the bombs are going to drop, and what happens? They get a phone message from the president, and then they talk about how in October they're going to do this phone message situation. So they get a phone message from the president saying that the missiles are coming. And then, of course, somebody comes to a house and they say, we're here to pick up your son because he was participating in a 23andMe or a Ancestry.com website. We've got his DNA, and he's one of the chosen DNA strands that we want to preserve after the Holocaust. And I'm just thinking to myself, how much of this is like taken right out of the show when we're discussing how they're using this DNA, these DNA sites, and why are they using it? Well, they're using it, one, because they want to genetically modify pharmaceuticals in order to, mark people that they can cull. But I never really thought of the idea that they're actually taking samples and ideas and saying, well, these are the elect that we're going to have to save if we just happen to be in a situation where we have a major catastrophe and we have to rebuild the human race.
No, that's what it is. It's part of that ARC program, which I wrote about in my book. You see this in movies, too. If you saw Sky Captain, The World of Tomorrow, if you saw Moonraker, if you saw the more recent 2012, that kind of goofy Roland Emmerich big CGI flick, the idea was the elite get a class, or the elite get a spot on the Ark, and if you have the right genetics. And that fits perfectly with the elite's view of eugenics, of special bloodlines, because it's all about the blood. I mean, if that's a running theme through all this, it's all about the blood, because it's not just bloodlines, it's also about, we've seen mainstream news this week talking about how getting blood infusions from the young is actually something that the billionaires do. Oh, well, haven't we heard about that from vampirists and, people in covens for many centuries? This goes back to the 15th century, to Vlad the Impaler. This has been known for centuries. It was laughed at. Oh, it just turns out that that's what the elite do. And so everything in this series, like you said, it's all reflecting reality, that the Pentagon has been taking people's DNA since birth and storing, that DNA. So it's not just Ancestry .com, the 23andMe sites, they're more recent versions of this. The Pentagon's been doing it for 40 years. That's public news. The CNN has even reported that.
Yeah, I mean, my wife and I were discussing this a while ago. We're probably going to do a more in-depth study on what we call the Ambrosia Company is what it is. The Ambrosia Company is Peter Thiel's behind this. He's putting money towards it. The idea that if we take in the blood of the young and we get blood transfusions, that is a way to have youth. In fact, My wife was calling it stinging in the vein as a play on singing in the rain, because it's what it is, stinging in the vein, and you take the blood from the young and it makes you younger again. Kind of like what Elizabeth Bathory did. If you remember the story of Elizabeth Bathory.
That's it, Bathory.
She was a countess that bathed in the blood of children and she was in a noble family of Hungarian noble family, and she would bathe in the blood of the young so that she could feel young again. And so all of this ancient stuff that we've heard about, the horror stories that make up our horror films and nightmares, are becoming reality now, as the elite are actually not even hiding anymore the fact that this is what they do, that they do participate in forms of vampirism. They perform in darker rituals than most LaVeyan Satanism and character, but the real Satan, and it comes in many forms and it appears in many ways. I was talking with Jay earlier about a number of things that are going on that don't make any sense. First of all, they're putting the Arch of Baal back up in Washington, D.C. We have in Arkansas, we have the Baphomet statue right next to the Ten Commandments. I mean, times have changed, Jay. I mean, this is where, right out in the open, we're showing that there is an increase, if not more people choosing the dark side over the other side. What do you say to that?
I think this is the period of the externalization of the hierarchy. We've heard this from the Madame Blavatsky, Alice Bailey school of thought, and I think that there's something to that. I think that the mainstream media, Hollywood, have been the chief vehicles for this, as well as the controlled music industry. They've been the vehicles for the inauguration of this pleasure dome. Kenneth Anger wrote that movie, did that short film in 1954. And as bizarre as it is, and I'm not necessarily recommending it, but what he does through that film is predict kind of this new period, this new era, this new Aeon that you're talking about coming into fruition, mainly through the pleasure dome. And I think that what we live in is essentially a version of this pleasure dome. The internet is a version of that. And Hollywood is really just retelling us this story over and over and over. I mean, the new season of Twin Peaks, that was about the Babylon working. That was about the birth of this Antichrist type system. This Nick Cage film that's just out, Mandy, it's about the same thing, the birth of this Antichrist type system, the destruction of that system as well. And that's what American Horror Story is about. It's the same story being told over and over and over. And so, I mean, you can listen to, interviews where people in these secret societies and occults, they will actually say that the mainstream media and the artistic presentations are part of an aesthetic terrorism to bring this about. So it's not conspiracy theory. They even say that's what they're doing. We did an interview with I guess you call him a Thalamite, talking about Jack Parsons and how Strange Angel, of course, was being broadcast on CBS, The Demand. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, did you ever think you'd see a day where they would put Jack Parsons in a TV show and talk about him? And he said, well, we have been looking forward to mainstreaming all of this and bringing it out in the open. The only thing is we're very shocked that they've done it in such a way. See, they made Parsons out to be a cartoon character, just like they do everything else. But it's the subtle hints of the occult actualities that he did at the time that he was the JPL rocket scientist. And it's always been a question as to why they allowed him to practice this type of dangerous activity while still representing our government and our space program. Well, maybe the government and the space program have all along had a darker agenda that was along those same lines, right?
That's true. I mean, but see, that's the thing. You try to tell people, no, that's not true. But just, I ask people, give a look into Jack Parsons. Find out what he was about. Find out even Aleister Crowley thought that Parsons was out of his mind. And we're talking about the beast here. We're talking about the guy they said that was the most demonic man that ever lived.
Well, I mean, I think that breakaway civilization notion is part of this. I mean, that's part of that theme that was in that American Horror Story season. And the reason I bring that up is that that's part of this idea of this cleansing. The theme of episode 1 was we got to have some kind of mass depopulation cleansing. That is the Luciferian doctrine. They all talk about that. You know, the radical eco nuts, they say the exact same thing. We got to kill off most of the planet. Mm-hmm. It's just that the higher level ones, they actually say, oh, it actually is a ritual sacrifice. And that's what American Horror Story 8 was talking about. They talk about it as a cleansing fire to bring in a new Aeon.
Right. And they were talking about, and these are the chosen ones. But then when Michael shows up, mm-hmm. and he says, well, I'm here to change all of it. And they're all looking around going, who is this guy? Well, can't you figure it out? I mean, right. The guy that runs the collective is the guy who basically is responsible for all the evil in the world. And this is why people are like wondering, how does this guy have the powers he has? And he's bringing forward all these dark entities and murder and death wherever he goes. And yet, you know, they don't identify him. You can tell already who he is. He's the Antichrist, and he just shows up. It's kind of like right. in the Stand. If you remember in that film, the guy shows
Flag.
up. Yeah, Flag. He shows up and everybody's like going, wow, this guy's kind of interesting, charismatic. Oh yeah, he's the Antichrist, right? It's like, you know, figure that out. I don't think people understand. I don't think people understand that if you have some charismatic idea or cult-like thing going on, and they want you to sacrifice more than you're willing to give, but you have to give it anyway. Otherwise, you're not going to look good in front of your friends or look good in front of your other scientific friends or whatever. That's what I worry about. And when I try to point out the whole climate change cult for what it is, people say, well, what do you have against climate change? I mean, no, you don't get it. Climate changes. We know this. But the technocrats have taken climate change, turned it into Orwellian newspeak, and anyone who says they're not for the idea of being part with some cult-like group who certainly is not, it's not about climate, it's about removing people from the planet whose carbon footprint is basically polluting everything. This is where I have to stop and say, oh, I see what the golden age is, removing people from the planet so the elite have the resources. And that's exactly what's in American Horror Story right now.
Yeah, it's an underground basis where the elite go that, you know, if you had the money or if you had the right genetics, the right bloodline, you're allowed into this facility when the nuclear blast cleanses the earth. And then when you emerge, you think, we're going to set up this utopia. No, it's actually a worse situation of the elite than being predators on the elite themselves. I thought that was ironic because when the Antichrist character shows up, he's there amongst the supposed elite. And he's like, oh, yeah, I'm here to actually pick the elite out of you and let you be predators on one another. So the system never ends. It's kind of an Ouroboros that just keeps eating itself, right?
Right. It's true. I mean, that's very interesting to bring up the Ouroboros because I think if people knew the symbolism of the snake eating its tail, and then once it snaps, that's the end. We're done. And it continues forever. And it's just like this dog. And one person is leading the circus and we fall into the circus. And the younger generations I worry about because they're being beguiled by the idea that everything that once was, that was sacred and reverent is now becoming profane and worthy of being ejected off because of those who are abusing their power, like the pedophile priests and all these groups that are out there.
Yeah,
and children and young people are turning off to it. And they're turning instead to what they feel is more safe and secure and powerful, and that is the dark side.
Yeah, that's the sad part about this. And I think that what's ironic in the series is that they want to return to the natural order. They actually talk about the dangers of social media, the tech companies basically destroying the world, making everything unnatural. And so what they want to do is return to a, quote, natural state, but it's not really a natural state. It's a completely brutal state where you can just be predators on one another. So what I'm getting at is just your point that the elite system that they want to impose, even if it makes it look like, oh, the present system is bad, and it is, it's corrupt, but what they want to bring, right, under the guise of austerity, under the guise of depopulation, is not going to be better. It's going to be even worse. In fact, even in the midst of that cult, you can't even have a girlfriend. You know, the main guy, you know, he's in love with the girl, and they're forbidden to have a relationship.
Right, and it's not even in the rules. They're saying it's not in the rules. We can do whatever we want. No,
and that's in 1984. That's in Brave New World.
Yeah.
You know, actual passionate relationships that are traditional, they're forbidden. You can't have that.
Exactly, and I think that this is a perfect illustration. And every time I watch American Horror Story, whoever the writers are, they have a great idea, a perfect idea of how cult mentalities are going to destroy the world.
Yeah.
The cult mentalities are destroying the world because they can, you can point out to various cults like Jim Jones, and you can point out to Marshall Applewhite. But see, what you remember is about both of them, or you tend to forget, is that they were selling an ideal. And the ideal was protection. The ideal was utopia. The ideal was a few people may have to die to make this happen, but we're going to do it, and we're going to do it anyway. And that's the thing, is you start convincing people, well, some people are better than others, and we may have to remove some people from the planet. And that was the whole idea behind Gunther Schwab when he came up with the idea of the green, ecological, same type of, pitch that he gave to Hitler, was that, hey, there are a few people on this planet that are eating up the resources of Germany, and I think we need to get rid of them so that we can have a better Germany and more agriculture or agri-friendly Germany. And he says, okay, who do you suggest? Well, we get rid of the gypsies, we get rid of the Jews, we get rid of the homosexuals, and he just went down the list, and Hitler goes, great idea, let's do it. And that's exactly what they're going to do in the future. That's what they're doing in American Horror Story. Who do we get rid of? What do they say? That one guy who was gay. Oh, he's just gay. We should get rid of him. And they were doing the same list that Hitler did back in the 1930s and the 1940s.
Yeah, that's the irony here, is that you would think that the coming system would be this fascist dictatorship, and in a way it is, but it's also ready to dispense with all those people as well.
Right.
All the people who think that they're, part of the system, that they're going along with it, the tech elite, the guys in Silicon Valley who think they're part of the system, they're going to be dispensed with eventually too, because it just depends on what level you go up. It's the higher you go up, the more people they want to depopulate. And it makes me think too of within the show, you do get this sort of Aryan Nazi tinge to it, because that main character does have, you said, that sort of Aryan, but he's also androgynous. You don't know whether is he male, he's kind of also female.
Right.
And that is very Luciferian. Makes me think also of Prince Bernhard. You mentioned this idea of depopulation. He was a member of the SS, and he's the principal founder of the Bilderberg Group. And he's one of the pioneers of mass depopulation. And
we were talking about Kissinger and how he wanted depopulation back in 1974, 75 with his plan. Starving people. It was starve the people, but make it look like it's a natural process. It got me now under the eye of Facebook, where they're now asking people who participate on my site as to whether or not I should be shut down or banned, or that my material may be offensive.
Yeah, this is unbelievable, draconian, just beyond even what the communists or any of the fascists did. Just mere fallacy of association. Oh, you were in the same room as a guy? Oh, you might be one of his minions, right? I mean, you had the loosest connection. Oh, you retweeted somebody from 5 years ago. It's insane. I said a bad word 8 years ago, and Facebook banned me for a month. So I know exactly what you mean. It's beyond anything a dystopian novel could imagine. That's the reality that's coming into to play here, and it actually is part of that beast system that you're talking about.
I mean, nobody understands this either. It really bothers me, because I try to explain to people, this is censorship, or this is a blatant erasing of people. Well, he's a bad person, we don't want him to be heard anyway. And I'm thinking, wow, you're speaking for everybody. And yet you're believing everything, the justification of the media who attacked him and who continues to attack him is saying is true. And one of the double standards I brought up the other night was, they go after Alex, and they go after several people who have actually, what is it, Abby Martin? They go after her. They go after several other people, Whitehead and several others, and they've gone after them, and they don't give a reason why. And I say, wow, these are the same news networks who go after the platforms and pressure people like Zuckerberg to take people off like that, and yet they spent a whole segment talking about the president's penis 2 nights ago. Go ahead.
Well, and talking about how Donald Trump is against free speech. So they on the one hand, they're saying, our free speech liberties have been infringed. Meanwhile, they campaign to take everybody else down who's actually beating them. That's the problem here, is that it's not just the issues, it's also that they're losing. They're losing their audience. They
are losing their audience. And I hope that people remember that, and they remember just how a network news organization attacked people in the independent media, and their ratings sucked, and we're giving them the power to do this. They should be ran down and shut down, and not because of free speech. They'd be shut down because of irresponsibility. Jay Dyer with us tonight on Ground Zero, 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. Little by little, they're offering you the beast system. Are you going to take it, or are you going to fight against it? We'll be into slasher films I'm watching. This, of course, is the Evil Dead series, because I think that Bruce Campbell's amazing. But, I'm a B horror film. I've been a B horror film my whole life. I've watched and studied horror films for a long time. I don't do as many horror films as I did when I was younger, but every once in a while when a good one comes out, I like watching it. I like watching mystery shows. I like watching all that stuff. And so, when we talk about subjects, when Jay and I talk about subjects such as these, we both have an interest in them. And that's why we talk about them, but we see how they evolve. And an example of this, Jay, welcome back to the program. An example of this is Netflix has come out with a new Chilling Adventures of Sabrina the Teenage Witch. I don't know if you've heard about this, Jay.
I did. I saw the trailer that you put in your article. And
so what do you think?
I don't know what to say about that yet because I haven't seen the series, but it does look a lot more hardcore. It looks a little more serious than the goofy original version. I did notice as I read through your article, there's one goblin you mentioned that I wasn't familiar with, Lena Dunham. She'd be a good goblin entity to star as the antagonist of one of. No, I'm joking. But I don't know. I mean, you wrote a great essay here, and you gave a lot of examples. But I think the original version was pretty innocuous. But this looks a lot more serious. It looks a little more. I don't know, cinema verite, to quote Nicolas Cage.
Exactly.
Cinema verite.
All right. Well, okay, let me just tell everybody the situation. Okay, so when we were kids, I read the Archie comics, and Sabrina was a witch, okay? And she had a little cat, and, she flew around on a little broom, and no one knew, and it was kind of like, the whole Bewitched type thing, which, of course, Grandma and Grandpa watched, and I watched, and, it was kind of fun, just the fun idea of a witch, or the fun idea, not going into detail. Well, now we have this Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, and, what you're looking at actually is you're seeing this trailer with a birthday cake, and there's 16 candles on the cake, and, she's, having this birthday cake brought out to her. And sitting at the table with her, a bunch of weird goth, fashion disasters sitting there at the table, and then at the head of the table is none other than Satan himself, or at least a goat-headed version of Baphomet is sitting there at the table with all the young people, and she's getting her birthday. So here we have another I'm a witch, or this is some satanic majesty coming of age story that basically, and according to Netflix, this is what they say. The show traffics in horror, the occult, and, of course, witchcraft. Tonally in the vein of Rosemary's Baby and The Exorcist, this adaptation finds Sabrina wrestling to reconcile her dual nature, half witch, half mortal, while standing against the evil forces that threaten her family, and the daylight world that humans inhabit. So the question is, are they really going to bring all this satanic symbolism to the forefront as being the good stuff, or is she fighting against the satanic symbolism and Baphomet and the goat? But you look at the posters, and she's sitting there getting ready to blow out the candles, and she's got horns. And see, if I were Wiccan, I'd be pissed off because, Wiccans don't worship Satan. But yet they make it look like that Sabrina is going to be a big Satan worshiper. In fact, what was it I was reading in another review of it? Okay, this is some of the characters. Let's see. Salem, the black cat from the comic book and from the Archies, will not have the ability to speak like in the Hokey series before. But Salem is not actually a cat. He's Sabrina's familiar, a goblin trapped in the body of a cat, dedicated to protecting and helping Sabrina. The new Zelda Spellman character is a Satan-worshipping queen and absolutely terrifying in the best way possible. At high school, Sabrina has to contend with Mary Wardell, and in the witch world, she has to deal with the Father Blackwood, a dogmatic and vindictive high priest. So I guess she's fighting against the priest. Sabrina lives with Zelda, Hilda, and Ambrose, her charming, rule-breaking, pansexual cousin on perpetual house arrest. This is certainly not Grandma and Grandpa's Bewitched. No, it's not. See, gone are the days where witches cleanse auras. Gone are the days when they make tinctures and bow to the moon. Now they're in the same room as Satan, which that's what I would say that this basically breaks all the rules.
I'll tell you a great film in this genre that I recommend is Devil Rides Out with Christopher Lee, because the Mokata character is based around Crowley, and he actually is the bad guy in the film. And Christopher Lee is a student of metaphysics. He's a guy who studies the esoteric, and this is how he defeats the cult in the end. So even an esoteric film can have, a positive message. And that was actually based on, the writings of British intelligence agent.
Right. Well, even you look back at some of the horror films, like, for example, I remember The Omen terrified me. And I thought it was a great film. Come to find out, it was written by a bunch of born-again Christians and written by some other religious...
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was written by a number of religious students and born-again Christians that basically wanted to... It was one of the best-made religious tract films, kind of like Omega Code and Megiddo. Those films are, they're kind of silly. But this film was actually, they had a lot of money behind it, and they were able to produce it to let people know about the Antichrist. It was a warning of the Antichrist, and that's why it's so well done. But, it goes back to that theory that a lot of these horror films are basically written by Christians trying to convert people over to the bright side, because you don't want to be over to the darker side. And so they make the dark side. And even the moral plays that go on with the slasher films. I mean, what? Anytime somebody at, Camp Crystal Lake was getting ready to have sex, we had, we had Jason just come in and hack the hell out of him, which basically said, don't have sex at camp or some ugly guy in a hockey mask will kill you. So
that's interesting.
These were the moral plays they played with horror films. I don't think people really understood that they were morality plays, and basically the devil was there to kill you if you sin. That was basically the idea. Now it's okay. Go ahead and play with this stuff. It's never going to burn you in the end. It's never going to harm you in the end. And it's okay to dabble in some of this witchcraft stuff. It's okay to make the sign and put a big pentagram in your bedroom and put salt around your... See, this is the stuff that they're trying to basically cartoon it out so that kids will get used to the idea, well, I saw this on a TV show and it worked for them, and I think that, I'm not saying that everybody does this, but I'm saying that when they take and they make it kind of cartoonish, or they bring it into the open, I think people are more naturally attuned to it. They become desensitized to it.
Absolutely, yeah. That's another way of conducting a version of predictive programming, a version of psychological warfare conditioning.
Right.
That's exactly what it is. And fiction is the best way to do that. Plato knew about that a long time ago. But, the irony is that even in mainstream news lately, we've seen stories about the reality of what goes on in these kinds of cults. And it even reaches up to the highest levels of power with the Nexium cult and the Bronfman. I don't know if you saw that story, but this ties into to people that Hillary donated, or actually got a lot of donations from 10 years ago.
Tell them about the Nexium cult. This would be a good way to actually to go to the next topic. But tell them about the Nexium cult. Tell them about the donations that Hillary Clinton got, and how the Nexium cult certainly was a sex cult. That while everybody was watching the Bhagwan Rashni show on Netflix, this was going on.
Yeah, exactly. This was it sort of operated under the guise of a corporate management technique for Amway, kind of like a human potential version of Amway or something. And it was run by a guy, Keith Rainier, and he somehow finagled his way into recruiting a bunch of Hollywood connected people. So he got the girl Allison Mack from the show Smallville, and she recruited a bunch of young actresses to join, and then it sort of spread into this corporate multi-tiered pyramid type scheme thing. And with the Trump investigations, this is my theory, into a lot of the sex trafficking and the child porn and all that in the last couple of years. The reason you've been seeing a lot of busts in that regard, I think ties in ultimately to this, because Hillary back in 2007 was getting, $10, $20, $30,000 donations from this group, from this Rainier sex cult. That was documented, I think, in the New Yorker back in 2007. So that actually shows a pretty clear line of connection between Clinton Foundation and all that and this group. And nobody really thought much about it until in the last month or so. They had to indict one of the Bronfmans, Claire Bronfman, who's the heiress of the Seagram's fortune. And I think she had to post like $100 million bail or something crazy because she was actually funding the sex cult allegedly, and then that her island was being used. So here you have a sex cult that reaches into the highest levels of the wealthy elite that mimics something directly from Eyes Wide Shut, directly from some of these horror movies that we're talking about, and it's reality. So that's what I always try to stress, and the stuff that I talk about, what I write about, is the reality behind this stuff.
Well, it's not just only movie; it's art imitating life or life imitating art, whichever.
Right.
I'm glad you brought that up because we're going to shift now, and once again, Hillary Clinton is now again the focus of another group that she's been a part of called The Wing, and we'll tell you what The Wing is coming up. 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. I'm Clyde Lewis. X's, which is a sex cult that donated a lot of money to the Hillary Clinton campaign. And of course, it seems to me that, if we're looking at sex scandals that could be opened up, that would be one of them. But of course, they kept it pretty much under wraps because this is something that, of course, has attracted a lot of the Hollywood elite. And so I'm sure they don't want anything to ruin this happy party they're willing to throw. They'll go with Me Too and others, and they'll want to, single out certain people. But other people have been involved with sexual misconduct and sex cults, and they're just waiting. I think they're just biding their time before they get exposed. But something that's interesting about what is happening with, this type of a cult or cult activity becoming more political. We remember that back when Trump was elected president, Lana Del Rey, who was a singer, she said that she casted a hex on President Trump. And it was because, she wanted to do the ritual that Michael Hughes did, who wrote the book Magic for the Resistance, Rituals and Spells for Change. That, of course, the singer Lorde also called her group together that were a coven. And, of course, she's called the Queen of Darkness. When you look at her, she does look like a little goth queen. But the thing that's really interesting today is, or actually yesterday, there was Beyonce's former drummer, Kimberly Thompson, saying that she's suing or that she's requesting a restraining order against Beyonce because Beyonce apparently practices witchcraft. And I was also reading in a byline that Hillary Clinton last April made an appearance in New York City at an exclusive women's club called The Wing. The event was put together by co-founders Audrey Gelman and Lauren Kassan in honor of Hillary, but they were able to chat about anything from her book, What Happened, to her legacy, to Russian meddling. And then it was just basically a discussion about, post-election conversation. But then it was reported that The Wing is a group of witches. And basically Hillary was speaking to a group of women practicing witchcraft and openly called themselves a coven, and they also made her an honorary member. But there was also reports that she has been attending other witch coven events. What do you know about that?
Well, it's not surprising. I did know about the first event that she attended, and this is what is going on in the elite circles. This is what they're really up to. Now they think they can come out into the open because the society has been altered and been engineered enough to where it's no longer taboo. It's not taboo to be a part of any of these groups now. But I want to mention that I think there's two layers of this. There's not just the layer of the let's get together and let's hand fast, let's do a spell. I think that when it comes to high power people like that, a lot of these groups function as intelligence networks. A lot of people don't know that, but cults originally go back to intelligence networks. They've always worked together. I wrote about this in my book, Esoteric Hollywood, and I think that it's no different today. So Hillary probably has a network of witches, like a CIA of witches that she has as her personal sort of, go-to spies out there for working for her. And that may sound crazy, but that's actually how the world works. The Queen Elizabeth did this. She had a network of spies who were some of them famous magicians like John Dee. Mm-hmm. So, Hillary's basically doing the Elizabethan model of how to run an empire.
That's right, and to have people who perform magic and rituals and things of that nature. What do you make of the Beyoncé story? I mean, I know for the longest time people have accused Jay-Z of being anti-Christian, and of course some reverse messages in his songs. But now it's being said that apparently Beyoncé killed this woman's kitten and decided to, I guess, do molestation spells on her. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I don't know what a molestation spell is, but I would imagine a lot of people wouldn't mind having Beyoncé do a molestation spell on them. But I mean, I did read her story. It's a little convoluted. I can't really make sense of. I mean, I wouldn't find it unbelievable that Beyoncé would be interested in voodoo or that kind of stuff. I mean, there's stories that Jennifer Lopez is very into Santeria and voodoo. This kind of stuff is popular amongst the elite. I wouldn't be surprised, but I couldn't really flesh anything out of her story that was that coherent. So, that could go either way.
Well, the judge didn't grant the restraining order. And so,
yeah.
But see, this all brings back to the idea that everybody has this, everybody's finding the Illuminati princess of the week. I mean, you can't speak of Ariana Grande in a nice way without somebody saying, you're a shill for the Illuminati if you think she's awesome, and I've sang with Pink before and they think that she's another shill for the Illuminati. So, I don't know. I just, some of this I think can be a little over the top. But then when these stories start coming forward of some strangeness going on with singers and stars, and of course, Sasha Fierce, you can't put that away, where she says that she's a different person when she's on stage. And obviously she is, because I've seen interviews with her where she's very calm, sweet, and very endearing. And then when she's Sasha Fierce, she's like this sex goddess, and it's like she could rip your head off if you get in her way.
Right.
But Jay Dyer, my guest tonight. So glad to have him on the program. And now we have a task of going eeny, meeny, miny, mo, finding somebody. Let's go to Derek, calling from Massachusetts. Good. You're on with Jay Dyer. Go ahead.
What's going on, Jay? Big fan. I would like to have a quick comment and then ask a question to Jay. A comment about some esoteric themes that I've noticed in passing. I'm trying to think of something to ask you. And I called in to ask the question I'm about to ask, but then as you were talking.
Okay, get right to the point, please. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry. I'm steeped in the comic book world right now, and the theme of allowing an entity into your body in order to combat another entity or in order to gain some kind of power is absolutely massive in the comic book world right now. And particularly in the book Venom, they're redoing Venom's origin. So the idea being that there's a controlling force in the universe that formed everything, and that Venom is kind of almost like a fallen son, or I guess you could say a fallen angel that came to Earth, and now it's his job to kind of combat this creative force in the universe. So that, as you were talking, I was like, oh my God, that's Luciferianism, isn't it? And also in the upcoming movie Shazam, he gets his powers through the pantheon of Roman and Greek gods, I believe. It's like six or seven different gods give him his power in order to combat Egyptian gods. So it's in Legends of Tomorrow on the Arrowverse on TV. The whole point of the entire last season was they were fighting this demon, and in order to beat it, they had to summon another energy into their bodies in order to combat it. So it's everywhere, and that's just I can give you a huge list online.
So okay, but we only have a little bit of time. So what's your question?
No, I mean later on, but just and then my question for Jay is I tend to intellectualize things too much. I was raised Catholic, and I was wondering, I believe you're one of the most intelligent people we have in this field, and you're extremely knowledgeable with the theology. So I was wondering, as somebody who is maybe having a crisis of faith, what would you say to me or to somebody in my position that could potentially put me back on the right path as far as believing again? I have my doubts as far as all those zeitgeist type stuff. So what would you and I believe you're unbelievably smart, and any of the fans listening should buy his book, Start Hollywood. It's genius. So what would you say to somebody in that position?
What would you say?
Well, I did a critique of the zeitgeist type view, if that's what you're asking, which is basically did a talk on Gnosticism and its similarity to paganism. So you could find that talk I did on YouTube. Would probably be the best thing I could think of.
the idea that the Jesus story is a passing on of solar worship. What would you say to that?
The Jesus story is what, close to solar worship?
Yeah, that it's the idea that that the resurrection might not actually happen, and that it's the esoteric version of this resurrection ritual that these secret societies have been doing since the dawn of time, like the idea of the 3-day journey to the underworld and then rising up as a complete.
Well, it's true that it repeats itself over and over again. The idea of the 3-day going under the underworld, coming out the other side. I mean, it's been going on for millennia, and the Jesus story, of course, is just part of that. You want to comment on that, Jay?
Yeah, I mean, that's a long question, long answer. So I would just say, listen to that lecture that I did if you want my full 2-hour version.
Well, you obviously got a fan. He had so many things he wanted to tell you in like so much time. So we're going to go to Peter now in Oregon. Hi, Peter. You're on Ground Zero.
Hi, Clyde. Thank you for taking my call, and good evening, Jay. Thank you for being with Clyde tonight. Anyway, I wanted to bring up really quick, Clyde. Do you remember a couple months ago when you were at the Paradise Lounge there with your wife, Janine?
Yes.
Somebody gave you a get well card for your wife? Well, that was me.
Well, thank you, Peter.
Well, she deserves it, and I would do it again in a heartbeat. But anyway, my question here is, do you remember a few years ago, Clyde, that you brought up an interesting topic on how the gates of hell could open up at any time? Well,
right.
I believe that they have already opened up, and I've noticed a lot of interesting it's like people in today's society, they seem to get angry really quick, or they seem to, like, their rage is like unbelievable. It's like nobody can stop their rage until actually somebody, well, I don't know, how do I say? What I'm trying to get to is that I believe in today's society that demons are taking over our entire planet. It's almost like an end of days type thing with our Earth.
Well, I would say, yeah, it feels like an end of days type of thing. I mean, they're making it seem like that, and in fact, it just seems like, as Jay would say, you know, a lot of predictive programming, putting us in that mindset, flipping it on and off like a switch. And
I mean, could it be like demon brainwashing? I mean, is it like? I
don't know. Jay, didn't Kenneth Anger say that you know, watching something like in a film or on a video is also like a ritual? It's almost like, even if nobody's there to watch it, the images are flickering, and sometimes even the spirits in the images can sometimes jump through into reality. We were talking, and I've always told you, I don't know if I told you a story about Wes Craven, but when I was doing a B-horror fanzine, I interviewed Wes Craven, and it was before the new Nightmare came out, Nightmare on Elm Street. And he was telling me that, you know, back when, Richard Ramirez came on the scene, he was worried that maybe that Freddy Krueger, or the spirit of Freddy Krueger, came through the movie screen and put himself in the body of Richard Ramirez. And I thought it was a very interesting concept, because he said, you know, because it kind of reminded me what happened when Heath Ledger and the Joker in that Batman series came out, and we had the shooting in Aurora. We had the shooting in the Aurora shooting, with the Aurora shooting in the theater, and the guy dressed as the Joker. It just seemed to me that there was some sort of meme or something going out there that certainly set off a number of people to commit crime.
Who was it was either Dahmer or Ted Bundy. One of those two guys had an obsession with watching one of the later exorcism movies, and the story is supposedly that he would just kind of rock back and forth watching the VHS of Exorcist 3 or something, just over and over and over. Right. And he felt like there's at least reports that he did in some way channel something from that movie. So I would say it's entirely possible.
Well, that whole Exorcist 3 movie is very underrated. I always suggest people watch it. It scared the hell out of me, mostly because of the great acting in it and a lot of the well choreographed scares in the film. And another thing that freaks me out is when you see anything that's a religious icon beheaded. It just gives me the creeps. It just does. And that's in the film as well. Peter, thank you for the call. I would say, there's some things that, certainly, there's something really sinister and creepy about it. And, of course, the Exorcist 3 movie, I don't think anybody watched because Exorcist 2 sucks so much. Let's go to Nathan in Vancouver Island, British Columbia. You're on with Jay Dyer. Go ahead.
Hello.
Hello, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Yeah, Once again, thanks, Mr. Lewis, for providing this platform for us and for your ardent support of that broadcaster out of Austin, Texas. This is a call out to all grandparents, both present and future like me. Quit your job and homeschool your future. Keep your grandchildren out of the system. It's toxic. I've seen it. Grandparents, this is why you are on the Lord's planet, to keep your loved ones out of the state's inherently immoral indoctrination system. It's poison. Thanks again, Ground Zero crew. Good night, North America.
Thank you, Nathan. Thank you for the call. Let's go to Tony in Indiana. Hi, Tony. You're on Ground Zero with Jay Dyer. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going all the way back to the beginning of the show when you were talking about how kids today, they any kid that has any, critical thinking, they drug them. If they have any energy that's beyond normal, they drug them. And then, kids today parents aren't teaching them right. They're not being the examples that they should be, and I think that's
neither are leaders. Our leaders aren't either. I mean, that's the thing.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
When we have leadership that bullies and people who bully back to the leadership, when we have other leadership that, doesn't care about whether or not she's getting money from a sex cult or whether or not she's taking part in a coven ritual. I mean, it just, and this isn't sensational. This is reality. I mean, it's been open for the longest time that Hillary Clinton has been an honorary member of Wing for a long time. And, even the Obamas, wasn't it? One of Barack Obama's relatives would practice some form of voodoo in the White House.
It was his mother-in-law. And what gets me, what really bothers me is that nobody, they don't think that this stuff's real.
Well, they talk about Nancy Reagan.
And they see the reality of it.
Nancy Reagan did it too. Nancy Reagan did it. Yeah, sure. I mean,
but there's power. There's real power in this stuff. And like you said, Clyde, they cartoon it up and belittle it, and people don't realize. I mean, I've seen some things in my life. I know 100% that it's real. And when you see things move that shouldn't move, and when you feel things touching your forehead that shouldn't be touching your forehead, that shouldn't be there,
right?
It's real, and people have just belittled this stuff, and they've cartooned it up. So people think, like you said, it's a cartoonish version of reality, and people need to wake up to the reality and the power of the God of this world.
Well, we try to bring it to people, and I'm sure a lot of people, they laugh and say it's all magical thinking. But look, if it's so silly and so laughable, why did the CIA and why did the military pay in so much money for remote viewing programs with the 1st Earth Battalion and the Army? They did this because the Russians were doing it too. They believed in the same things. The Russians were performing acts with their minds. They were doing things with their minds, paranormal activity, and yet, people can still laugh at it and say it's all hocus pocus and pseudoscience. I beg to differ. I've seen it too. Jay, I'm sure that you've been privy to a number of things that have happened with all the research you do.
Yeah, in fact, if you read the white papers, the PDFs from the SRI research into the 1st Earth Battalion and all that, they say that the remote viewing was the one that really stood out as being real. They really did have success with that.
Right.
You can find those papers online in public.
And then you see, of course, Stranger Things, which is, one of the popular shows that's kind of losing its popularity now because it's between seasons. But heck, that show's based on the Montauk Project, where kids were used for remote viewing and other time travel, or at least they thought they were in the midst of time travel using LSD and other drugs. So, they're trying to bring, there are people that are trying to bring it out, trying to expose it. And there are other people that are espousing it and making it look normal. So, you have to use discernment in anything you do. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying that it needs to be something that we all need to be aware of and understand, so that if our kids or if anyone else around us has questions, we'll be able to answer those questions without bias. And I think that's the problem, is too many biases, not enough curiosity, and then not enough rational analysis of that curiosity once they discover it. Jay Dyer with us tonight on Ground Zero, 888-673-3700. That's 888-673-3700. Get involved in the dialogue tonight. Very important dialogue, I believe. Oh, that, and I've said this before, and somebody had brought up too, Jay, they were saying you said the gates of hell were open. Well, I said that back when they brought they were going to bring the Arch of Baal to actually New York. And there was enough protest to say, no, we're not bringing something that represents the horned god to New York. So they moved it to Trafalgar Square, and then they erected Pazuzu just down the street from the arch. And I thought, there you go. You just get a right picture, you get the right angle. You got Pazuzu standing there right under the arch. And the thing that's really interesting, and I was talking to you, I wanted to bring this up too. Have you noticed that in a lot of movies these days, and in a lot of, I guess, other movies dealing with the devil or the evil spirits, they no longer address Satan as the demon that they use in the shows. Have you noticed that?
Mm-hmm.
And I think,
no, you're right.
And I think they do that because, you see, that's the thing, is that most Christians and most people who don't know anything about the occult, they say they have some other demon like Paimon, which is really a jinn. They have Ahriman. They have all these other names for demons, Abisuth and others. And people who know the names of the demons know that these demons are powerful, older, and maybe even existed long before Satan did. And so it fools people into thinking that, they have some sort of security, but then when you throw them that this is another demon that we've never heard of, people are confused and they say, well, it's all about Satan. Well, it's not about Satan. There's a hierarchy of demons that are being utilized in Hollywood, and I think people need to wise up and understand how this game is being played. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it reminds me of the Switzerland tunnel. We can't forget that ceremony, that bizarre Swedish tunnel ceremony that had all these EU elites and bureaucrats that are watching this really bizarre, supposedly art performance that was clearly a ritual. You've got Baphomet there. You've got the horned, deity dancing around in the midst of all of these workers, basically. The right. Workers are essentially serving the elite there, and the elite are all sitting up laughing as the artistic representation basically shows this. And who's behind it all? Well, the system is run by this horned Pan type god. And again, this is a theme we're seeing not just in America, not just in Hollywood, but it's a global phenomenon. In everything from the Super Bowl to the Grammys to the VMAs to tunnels, the building of a freaking tunnel. Why would that, if there's not something to this notion of underworld and what you're talking about with Hades and tunnels and so forth, then there wouldn't be this giant, essentially ritual before the creation of this underground base and tunnel.
Well, when I first heard the word CERN, I knew that CERN meant something as an acronym, but I thought of Cernunnos in theistic Satanist groups. And what I mean by that is there are satanic groups that are not theistic. They're just basically atheists and agnostics who use Satan as an icon of rebellion, not necessarily worshiping the devil. They don't believe in either God or the devil. But there are theistic Satanist groups that believe in committing acts of terror and crime and evil. I was reading an article today, and I should have brought it in my notes today. I forgot to do it, but Donald Trump goes on and on and on about MS-13. And I was reading today that many members of MS-13 are part of a number of very dark satanic organizations. And what I mean is that they're organized death cult ritualists. And, because it's just confusing. You have to be so clear on how you describe Satanism, because there are a lot of Satanists out there that don't necessarily align themselves with these types of groups and organizations. And, of course, if you've remembered some of the interviews I've done with Diabolus Rex, he says, well, there are freaks and fanatics in every religion, in every belief system, in every pantheon. And he considers theistic Satanist groups to be those groups. And embracing Satanism today, for a lot of people, or embracing something that's dark and perhaps they feel they're getting more power, this is, for them, an ultimate form of rebellion. And what's interesting, too, is that we get into the resistance, we get into anti-Trump sentiment, anti-Trump statements, even joining satanic groups, joining covens, and doing all of this stuff. This is also an anti-Trump statement. They do it as an anti-Trump statement. They're saying, well, this is going against everything. And they feel that being part of the resistance means you have to basically be a part of groups that talk about state socialism, communism, and I've gotten arguments about that before, because we're now separating the substance by, you have one group on one side saying, well, we are patriots, but of course the group on the other side said, no, these patriots are Nazis. And so the Nazis are saying, well, these guys are communists, and the people don't care that they're communists. They just don't want to be affiliated with Nazism. But yet the whole division process and embracing death and death fetishism, that's something that happened during the Gothic periods in Germany, and it happened during the Gothic periods in England. So much death was around them that they couldn't, rather than trying to beat them, they joined them. And of course, we had a lot of goth cults, blood drinkers. We hear a lot of stories about people who use the blood of the innocent to try and be young again. And so bizarre rituals took place, and a lot of bizarre activities that are now the subject of horror movies seem to be arising again. Bizarre rituals are conducted in basements, meeting halls, public facilities, churches. I mean, most Americans have absolutely no idea what is going on. I mean, of course, when the mainstream news tells us about pedophilic priests, we're all over that. We never investigate our own neighborhoods and what's going on. And the reason why is because we don't want to even assume for 1 minute that the neighbor next door could be secretly doing something like this. Could secretly be doing rituals that would be considered dark or irreverent or profane. And we see a lot of mainstream news articles about Satanism, and it's always about one side or the other side hating this side or that side and saying, we have free speech, we have freedom of religion. And they do have freedom of religion, no doubt. But ultimately, what is going on here is what these groups who want to take the old version of Satanism and they want to make it a new form of Satanism that is creating the new age that will welcome a new Satan or a new man.